Welcome to The Turnover. The format is simple. Take 3 multifamily media network hosts with a maintenance background and put them together. The twist is that, like maintenance in the apartment industry, they have to respond to the unknown. You see, 2 of the hosts don't know what the topic is. The fun part is there's no limit and you get to listen in. So what ideas are we turning today?
Welcome all to this episode of The Turnover with Paul Rhodes, Mark Sharp, and Chris Caramanica, all hosts here on the Multifamily Media Network. Guys, let's get right into it. So I was reading an article, and I have it up just as a refresher. I want to make sure my stats are correct. So I was reading an article that housing construction has bounced back in December of 2024, and it's thanks to the multifamily sector. So the U.S. Census Bureau released its new residential construction report in December, only a few short weeks ago. The report measures building permits, the start of the construction process, that means housing starts, they actually broke ground, and housing completions. Construction's been running well for the last 3 years, but we've seen a major uptick to pre-pandemic levels now with the starts. So the data shows, and this was really interesting and why I wanted to bring it to you guys, is that there was an increased start of 155 units to a 12-month high of 418,000 units. So single family has rose 34,000 units to a total of 1.5 million in new construction. That's a massive, massive number. And it led me, you guys might know where I'm going with this, but that's the best part about our show and The Turnover. So housing's increasing, right? When do you feel that maintenance professionals need to be on site during new construction? Oh, Paul, nothing makes me happier than when you're on mute. So I don't know where you went.
Yes, exactly.
Can you hear him?
No.
Oh, okay, cool. So this is the best part about this week. So while Paul figures out why he just went mute, which is fantastic, by the way.
I love it.
Mute Paul Rhodes is my happy place. Mark, when do you think that maintenance professionals need to be on site during new construction?
Wow. Maintenance professionals, I don't know that I necessarily have an answer for that. I could understand a maintenance supervisor during construction having a maintenance representative, and maybe that's what you mean. Just anyone from
Let's
maintenance.
start with the maintenance supervisor, right? Because you don't need a full crew while everything is still sticks and bricks. Right. Let's start. When should you have the maintenance supervisor? Not a regional. Regionals and directors are usually involved very early in the process. When should you have a physical body on site?
To me personally, I would think after framing, when you start adding your infrastructure, when you start adding your electrical, plumbing, when you start, terms escaping my brain at the moment, but when you start adding those pieces into it, I think it's extremely important to have someone for maintenance there, just for the sake of being able to take photographs, knowing where things are run, knowing how vent stacks are run, knowing how things are done behind the walls. I think having a maintenance supervisor, but to me, it would be once electrical, plumbing, once those things started getting added. I had the opportunity to do that for a property that was being built several years ago in Simpsonville, and it made all the difference for me in understanding the construction side.
Is that better?
Oh yeah, we can hear you now.
Oh, Paul's
Wow.
here.
Yay.
Paul's here.
Sorry, I forgot he was here.
Found the duct tape, okay? I think a part of the answer to this comes into financing. If we're talking about having a maintenance supervisor, who's going to pay that salary? Because typical management financing, my understanding is you've got to have at least a firm time that you're going to have rents coming in to begin paying that. So that means if you go in at the time of framing, and from a philosophical standpoint, Mark, I agree with you completely. The earlier, the better.
Yeah.
At the same time, though, there's no money to pay at that point. And at the end of framing, I don't know that they're even beginning to heavily market other than the construction signs around the property saying, look here, we're coming, move in soon. I think 1 month prior to the first inspection, to where you're inspecting it, to when you begin to inspect to accept the apartments.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I think 1 month prior is that gives you a chance to set up your shop. By that point, what faucets, toilets, what mechanicals you're going to have, so you can place the order for parts that you will need.
Absolutely.
Nothing breaks on a new property.
No, nothing ever breaks when it's brand new. It's under warranty. It's under warranty. Nothing ever breaks when it's under warranty.
If it does break, one phone call, they'll come fix it instantly.
From a contractor 3 states away on a Friday.
Yes, that's right.
Yep. Sure, buddy. You got it.
Yeah, I have a little bit of I've had a bunch of new constructions. I've done it, Mark, I've done it your way. I was able to get the financing, Paul, to your point. I got the developer to carry the payroll of that person up until we were operationally. And Paul, I've done it your way of, they're moving in 30 days. We're accepting apartments. I'm a split the baby kind of thing. I like it. I like maintenance supervisors to be, or a maintenance somebody other than a regional, the guy that's going to run the building, right? The guy that I've hired. I want them on site before drywall goes in, because as-builts are fantastic, right? Until they're not. And we've all seen plenty of as-built drawings. They shouldn't call them as-built. It's maybe this is how we built it is what we should call them, because they never truly represent what's behind the wall, right? So I'm a big proponent of getting maintenance supervisors on site before the drywall goes in. Now, there's a lot of downsides to that. Paul, when like you were saying, a month before, you're probably pre-leased. You have a good amount of people that are coming in. A lot of your major inspections have been done. By the time that you're saying a month before, that last month is usually punch list items. It's usually a couple of sign-offs, but the major inspections have been done. Your electrical, your plumbing, typically your fire system. A lot of those things are done. They're baked 1 month prior. But for me, it's about knowing what's behind the wall, right? It's knowing where things are. And before maintenance, before the appliances get put in, right? Do we need to shift an outlet? Do we need to move a pipe, right? Let's do it now, right? Not when we find out. I had one deal once where we put in a fire mitigate, without calling out the brand name, we put in a fire system on our stoves. They were electric stoves. The idea of the system was when the smoke alarm goes off, this device cuts the power to the electric stove. Works the same way on gas stoves, by the way. But for this example, let's talk about electrical. So they went and they put that in, and they moved in the stoves, and then the stoves were were pushed off the wall by 6 inches.
Yep.
Why were they pushed off the wall by 6 inches? When the contractor put in the electrical outlets, he put them not where they were originally called out on the drawing. He put them where it was convenient for him. And it was directly on the spine that runs down the center of an electric stove, not in the recessed portions of the back, where that device would typically sit. And it was 6 inches off the wall. And they said, oh, well, now what are we going to do? We can't move the outlets. So in approximately 80 units, we ended up building for lack of a better term, backslash extension on the backs of those stoves because they were now sitting 6 inches off. Now, I'm not saying a maintenance supervisor would have caught that or would have been able to do anything about that. But my hope is by having somebody there before the walls go in, somebody that knows the project. Hey, we're putting in electric stoves. Hey, we're putting in this fire mitigation system on these stoves. I know all this. I've sat in construction meetings. I've seen the drawings. I've been part of the process. And that's something that probably could have been caught before the drywall went up. Because once the drywall went up, nobody wanted to move the outlets. Maybe before the drywall went up, those outlets could have very easily been extended and moved. Thoughts? Similar examples?
My question is, what would the expectation be of this person?
Yeah.
And the reason why is if we're talking about having maintenance on site, you even mentioned it of, I don't know if the maintenance supervisor would have caught that. If a maintenance supervisor would not have caught that, then the responsibility has got to be spelled out for development or construction to do that piece of it. So that's,
well, let's look at,
are we actually relying on a maintenance supervisor to do something that development or construction should do a better job of?
Yes.
Yeah, that I don't know that. You said you don't know that a maintenance supervisor would have caught that. I'm very sorry for what I'm about to say, but I don't think a maintenance supervisor would have caught that.
Okay.
For what?
I don't think he should.
No, that's a developer issue. That's a construction issue. Should definitely be handled by the developer. But having putting that kind of pressure or putting that kind of responsibility on a maintenance supervisor. Listen, we're maintenance supervisors because we fix stuff developers screw up. Right? We're maintenance because we fix things that they do wrong. I've said it 1,000 times. If next time a developer wants to come to town, they should poll 20 maintenance supervisors in town and say, what should we put in this apartment community? And maintenance supervisors will build you a maintenance-proof community. Because we know where you should put stuff.
Like the shop where you can get to it.
But I don't think a supervisor would have caught that. It's not until after it's done, you're putting stuff in, and then it's, that's a maintenance issue now.
Let's look at it. Let's look at it through a different lens. And I hear what you guys are saying. You're right. That's a little bit more technical. Let's give you another example. Different community. I had a maintenance supervisor that I had brought in pretty early in the construction process, and they had put in all the mechanicals. It was split systems. We had condensers on the roofs and 100 condensing units on the roofs. Very small Mitsubishi splits, but the condensers were all up on the roof. And I had brought the maintenance supervisor in early, and he looked at the layout and he looked at everything, and he came to me first, didn't go right to construction and development. He goes, how am I going to PM all the condensers? And I said, what do you mean? Now, this was somebody that was knowledgeable, not a construction professional, but he knew maintenance. He goes, there's no water spigots on the roof. And I said, what? Now, I had done the plan reviews. We all miss stuff, right? I missed that. I missed a condenser. So those kinds of insights that developers and construction professionals and architects and engineers don't think of operationally is one of the many reasons why I like to bring in maintenance supervisors. I now have worked with architects and engineers that I've worked with for years, and some of them I don't even work with anymore, who will text me or call me and say, will this work operationally? Because they've learned those lessons that I taught them. Hey, you need a hose bib on the roof if you want to do your PMs. Hey, the trash compactor has to go in this direction, not the direction that you called it out on the drawing. Or, like I just saw recently in a property that we're building, they had the trash compactor being taken off the bin and moving 2 feet into the wall. And I said, but I have a piece of equipment that helps me do that. In your configuration, my maintenance team members have to remove it turn it, then hook it up to the very expensive machine that I bought to bring it out. If you just turn that machine 90 degrees, I can hook up my little dumpster cart and slide it right out of the building. No muscle, no nothing, operationally. So have you guys seen similar things? And does that change, looking at it through the operational lens, does that change maybe your thoughts on when we should get somebody on site? Or no? And it's fine. We're free to argue.
Yeah, to me, it doesn't. I think we're trying to look for a solution by having the person who identifies the problem be the solution as opposed to the people who caused the mistake in the first place. And yes, I agree with you. Stuff will be missed. We're all human, right? But things like dropping the spigot on the roof, I've seen it the same way. And I know, Mark, you nodded your head with Chris's example of doing that. My question to you, Chris, is what was the access to the roof? Did they have a full door or did they have to go up through a hatch? And if they had to go through a hatch, was it a true ladder or one of those bifurcated, cheapy things that has the offset steps that is an OSHA nightmare? And those items, just the fact that you guys know exactly what I'm talking about, that's a repeated issue that I know has been identified by architects and designers and developers. Why do we have to be the requirement to do it? And I know, yeah, you're right. You're exactly right, Mark. It's cutting money in the beginning. But if, and maybe this takes it in a different direction and we can stop it there, but if we honestly and truly, oh, Chris, listen to this. If we truly want our maintenance technicians to have work-life balance and have barriers on what their responsibilities are, we need to hold other trades to their responsibility so that more and more scope creep for the maintenance supervisor doesn't continue. There, I said it. Mic drop. Wait, no, I like my sound.
You're not getting off that easy, and I might mute you if you start again. So,
no, I don't know. There's somebody on site during this process that's supposed to be verifying these things, and if it's drawn up and it needs to be in this spot, and the inspector goes in and says, okay, it's in this spot. Okay, great. But it is 100%, I say 100%, but it's definitely value engineering, I think is what they call it. Okay, we can build
that's a topic for another day, but yes.
Yeah, we can build this for 100,000.
Put that on the list is something that we're going to talk about on a future episode of The Turnover is value engineering.
Oh, God. Value engineering. But it's just the glamorous way of saying they cheaped it. But it comes down to money. Sure, you can have a proper hatch. You can have a proper fold-down ladder. You can have those things, but it's going to cost you more money. And with cap rates and depending on the loan, it could every additional amount, every additional dollar that's spent means more money that you need to collect and rent, and you underwrote your loans to be, or your rates to be between here and here. And if we do these things, you're going to need to add an additional $5 or $6 that will tear up your underwriting. It'll have to be rewritten. Ideally, I would love to have somebody there from day one verifying, okay, yes, it's supposed to be there. Great, it's there, but not somebody from the developer. I would love to have somebody from the on-site staff, from the company that's going to be running the property, right? Because developers are going to build it and then they're going to move. They're going to go on to the next project and they don't care about you. Okay. We built it to scope. We said we would do what we're going to do. We did it. Now it's on you. And again, I like I said before, if you have a maintenance guy that has any say whatsoever in how a property's built, we could probably build you a pretty good maintenance-free community. I wouldn't plant trees near a swimming pool, first off. Wouldn't put holly bushes around condensers. Don't ask me.
It's not like I know what I'm doing. But that's
not like I know what I'm doing. Right.
But that's the point of my question is we know operationally what we're doing. I'm not knocking the engineers and the architects, right?
No.
They have their means and methods. They have their schooling. They have their experience. I'm not knocking the builders because they have their experience. But for this increase in multifamily housing that we're seeing, all these new units being built, right? Are they being built operationally for the long term? Mark, to your point, it's more expensive for them to do it on the front end to make sure these things are right. That's why things get VE'd out. I know what you're going to say, and you can jump on I am of the opinion, I'd rather you spend the money now because operationally it costs the property exponentially more money in time, in labor, in materials. Let's look at that. Let's look at that in resident interaction, right? So if that roof that I was talking about, which was only a 4-story roof, didn't have that hose bib that thankfully we caught it in time, I would have units that a maintenance supervisor, 100 units, that would have a valid complaint about why he wasn't PMing that equipment. And while our protocols is to make sure it's PM'd minimum semi-annually, and in that market, he probably could have gotten away with cleaning those condensers semi-annually. I would have liked it more. He would have had a very valid reason on why he was only doing it annually or not at all. Because he would need 400 feet of hose that he'd have to snake up either through the building causing water damage or through the exterior of the building. Now it's taking him 2 hours to run a hose, maybe have to put in a booster pump because it's 4 stories up. He may not have the water pressure he needs. Or he'd have to carry up 5-gallon buckets to use a mobile pressure washer. We're not quantifying that cost. We're not quantifying that expense.
I got a question for
Put
you.
in a hose bib that maybe cost the developers, let's just say $1,000 for them to cut in a T, run it up a chase, and poke it out through a wall and do the ceiling. Cost them $1,000. We would have spent that on a half of a condenser that went.
Sure. And it's a good thing you all caught it, because while your company has a policy on PM those units, and you would hold your maintenance supervisor accountable to PM those units, if you hadn't caught that and he had that valid complaint, a lot of people would have said, guess what? Figure it out. So, yeah, that's crap. I said crap. I didn't mean to say crap.
It's okay. We can say crap on the terrible.
It's not one of the illegal 7 words. So what's the answer, Chris? Where do we come down? What's the answer?
I don't think that there is, but I think that listeners that are involved in new construction are making sure that somebody is at the table early in the process. Whether that I have the privilege of being involved in plan set reviews for properties that aren't breaking ground for 2 years. And there are things that I don't catch, right? But I'm part of the process. Is it, Chris, and I've got this question more than once, Chris, is this a good location for the trash room? And I can look at a drawing set and go, absolutely not, or I need the door to be double doors instead of a 36-inch because I know the operations. But then there's other things, even in my role, that I miss. I miss that hose bib in the plan reviews. I own it. Sometimes I'm the kind of person, many of our listeners are, and I know you guys are too, I have to see it physically. I have to be in the space. That's just how my brain works. I know how to read drawings. I know how to read plans. But there's something different about when it's starting to get built, which is why I think it's important to have that maintenance supervisor in the property before walls get closed. He may be able to pick up operational things that either A, the property management company needs to plan for, or B, that the developer can fix prior to closing everything up, right? It's either or. You're either, hey, can you guys fix this? No? Okay. Then I know I need to come up with a plan. Now, there are the money downsides, and not everybody's got the money for that. But I think in wrapping up, I think it's important to have for your high-level maintenance team members, whether it's a regional or director level or VP level, involved early on using the lesson learned, because we've done more of these than the architect that you found. We've done more of these than the builder you found, right? Because now architects and builders, they're doing houses, they're doing commercial, they're doing industrial, now they're doing multifamily, right? We do multifamily. It's what we do. We build and maintain and operate apartments. As we wrap up this episode of The Turnover, I think it's important that if your organization is doing new construction, you figure out where that money is going to come from to get somebody on site earlier. You figure out who on your operational team needs to be working with your developer and engineers and architects as early in the process as possible, because it will cost you money later. Operationally, it will cost you money with resident satisfaction. It will cost you money with employee satisfaction. So thanks for joining us for another episode of The Turnover. Mark, Paul, as always, it's a pleasure. And we'll see you next time. On our next episode, Mark Sharp is going to have an interesting topic that you're going to want to tune back in for. So tune back in for our next show.
Now it's your opportunity to respond and let us know what we missed. If there's any topics of conversation you'd like us to turn over, head over to multifamilymedianetwork.com and leave us a message.